but this is for people who love action films, but probably haven't quite come to discover your work yet.
The painful thing is that so few people have discovered my work at the moment. We're trying very hard to change that, but it's a strange thing. People we're talking about, it's almost like it's a cabal that is loaded against Scott, and by default me as well in this case. But he's so fucking good, and he's so popular, 30 million followers, and yet somehow breaking through that glass ceiling, that barrier between where we are now and where the studio films that get huge P&A is so tough. I've come to the conclusion we just have to throw a lot of really well-aimed punches, and we'll take a couple of bloody noses along the way, but we just have to keep putting good movies out there, good products, until they can't fail. They can't avoid having to respond to what we're doing, and that's sort of the aim with these pictures, with The Debt Collector, with Accident Man, with Avengement, the one we're doing now, even Triple Threat, in which he plays the bad guy. And it's like, you have to sit up and take notice of this cat. He's doing better work than your boys are, and he does his own goddamn stunts as well, you know. And it's, you know, and acting wise, he can take any one of you on nose to nose, you know, and that's what we're trying to show. So yeah, not enough people seem to know about us at the moment.
Actually, we were at the premiere of Accident Man in Birmingham. Scott
Brilliant.
was there. When we interviewed Scott, we spoke to him, and he had some very nice things to say about you.
Right.
Because obviously
we weren't fighting that weekend.
No, we've noticed that there's kind of a bit of a collaboration thing going on, and I've likened it to Leone and Eastwood, or maybe even Chow Yun-fat and John Woo.
Well, it's an honour. You know, I'm very honoured to be included in those names. We get on very well. I'm lucky enough that he's chosen to keep coming back and doing pictures with me. Puts me in a very fortunate position of being a working director. We seem to have a process that brings out the best in each other, and I say that in fear of overstepping my boundaries with him. I think he's doing very, very good work when he works with me. I certainly am doing my best work when I work with him, because it's a very, very challenging environment. You know, we don't let the other one off. And we also work with Stu Small, who's part of the three of us, who helps with the script, and he should not be left out of this either, because he's very, very important to each of these pictures we've done together, every single one of them. Even Triple Threat, I brought him on as, I think it's almost anonymous. They give him a terrible credit, but he basically rewrote every single line of dialogue in that script and made it worthwhile, and it's bloody good. And he really did a good job with Scott's character. So the three of us together, half the time it's pushing the others to do good work, as well as putting on our own work. It's a really good relationship. It gets acrimonious at moments, and there's some fighting, but that's the best, you know. And then there's a good, you know, congratulating and thanks, and it's working well. You know, he does. If I choose to do something, you know, we have the one bone of contention is the use of, for example, the use of slow motion. If he thinks I'm going to do a shot in slow motion because I'm too lazy to get the action right in real time, he will mention it, and he will say it, and he's like, you're not doing this just because you don't have time to rehearse it properly, right? And likewise, when we're pulling something together with dialogue and I see how he's doing a particular performance, I'll say, you know, this isn't just because that's the easiest route right now, the route of least resistance. And so there's a, you know, for example, there's a constant give and take which seems to promote the best work in all of us. And I think, you know, when you look at how good movies are made, and I can't talk for other art because, you know, usually it's one person sitting in front of a canvas or behind a typewriter. Movies are truly a collaborative process. And if you are all there for the best movie possible, and needling the other people and geeing them up and cheerleading them when they need it and slapping them in the ear when they need that, it only makes for a better film, and it's quite exciting to do, you know. So that's that, yeah.
I can imagine it sounds very exciting. One of the things Scott said about you actually is that he pretty much described you as a guy who can get things done under stressful, sometimes very, very sort of tight conditions. As a filmmaker, bearing in mind that you've said that what you like to do and what we feel that you do well is put out quality movies, high quality movies. What is the challenge you find as a filmmaker to put out something of quality but under very, very tight deadlines and restrictions?
It's very, very nice of him to say that, and nice of you as well to corroborate it. The issue is, you do a shot list, and the shot list says 20 shots, for that scene. By the time you get to the night before, you reshot list it, you get it down to 3 or 5, and it's like, God, you crush it down. And then you get to set and you're like, oh my God, and you have to take it down to 2 shots because you've only, each shot is 45 to 50 minutes, setting up the camera, getting the lighting ready, everyone having to know, rehearsing it, putting it. And so the ability to take your wondrous creation and consolidate it into the minimum amount of work, but still retain quality, is a challenge, and that's what you're doing. And I've become experienced in that. I don't know if I'm good at it or not, but I've become very, very experienced in it because 16, 18 movies into this now, and then basing that on a lot of second units. Being very, very privileged to have worked as a stunt coordinator with some of the top directors, as going even further back as an apprentice to my uncle Vic Armstrong, who was very, very good at that sort of work as a second unit director, consolidating. Any moron can go out and shoot 25 setups, and you're going to find something eventually. It's like the cameraman who takes, the photographer who takes 1,000 photos, and you're eventually going to find one in there that's good. On a movie, you don't have that. On a film where time is money and money is everything, you don't have that sort of luxury, so you are always consolidating your plans, and the ability to do that is what seems to make you pretty good at this budget level, or in any budget level probably. But I'm experienced at it. I'm trying and learning, and each time you're trying to do a movie where it doesn't look like you're compromising too much, so you try and do that artfully, and
and what sort of challenges Sorry, I didn't mean to.
That might explain it, but also being able to work with really good people as well, actors, and you walk in there and you look at the actors and you realise they're doing it really well. You're like, guys, I'm not going to be able to get you the close-ups. We're going to have the camera move around if you can find your close-ups, and then you do it in one shot, that sort of thing, So.
Now, what sort of challenges does the action in a film, and martial arts fight scenes in particular, because they are very intricate and they're very grueling on the performers, what sort of challenges do they present to you as a filmmaker?
An enormous amount, and I'll be bluntly honest here. The fight choreography, I leave to Scott and whomever his choreographer is on that movie. I don't get too involved. I did all that for years. I've done tons of it. I know how choreography works. I know how action direction works. I've done it. It's a job. It gets done. You show shot list, you show previews, the director gives you a thumbs up, you go off and do it. He puts his notes in, and when I'm directing a movie, I'm not out there directing the action, the fight scenes. That's silly. That's simply taking a preview and turning it into film. You want to leave that to the guys that are focused on that and absolutely interested in that, and that's their bread and butter. I'm there to watch performance. I'm there to watch all the other stuff going on, and I freely admit that. There's no ego involved in that at all. I've been very lucky to have Tim Mann, Luc Lafontaine, Garrett Warren, some of the very, very top people in the business do my action for me, by favour or by the fact that they've wanted to be there for because of the actor. I shoot up to the first punch or whatever it may be, and then I take it from the bloodied actors afterwards, and I take the drama side of things. I've helped design that, and I get a very good idea of how long they need, and I make sure they have that, and they have enough time to do what they can. Now, having said that, as a director, I'm in charge of the storytelling and the performance. So I will watch that fight, and I will watch often the choreography and make sure that we're getting the eyes of the actors, you're getting the emotional pull. And even the absolute hardcore martial arts fan does not really want to just watch martial arts. He wants to watch a story that involves him emotionally and pulls him into it. And a lot of that is in the eyes. We spoke about Bruce Lee earlier and how fantastic he was. Mm-hmm. Bruce Lee's great, but if you just watch the wide angles that the choreographer did, it would be interesting. But what gets you about Bruce Lee are these moments where he addresses the camera and he makes those noises and he has this incredible aura, and that's done almost certainly by the first unit director, who then puts his input into the fight scene. You cut those shots in, and now you have something that's really, really interesting to watch. So I am the dramatic part of those moments, but the actual choreography itself, it's a bit more nuts and bolts. I know what the shots are going to look like because I've seen the video previews, and they ask me how much time, and it's my job to battle with the production to make sure that the boys get as much time as they can to make these fights as beautiful as possible. Sometimes I'll go in there and watch. Many times I'll shoot one of the cameras, and I'll get in there and just steal a few shots and annoy the hell out of Scott because I've seen something good. But those shots normally end up in the movie because they're sort of interesting and they buck the rhythm a little bit, you know. But I would not get involved in their choreography. They've practiced it for a few weeks. They've done it. At that point, it's not like a dialogue scene. If there's a dialogue scene and I see a happy accent, I'll say, how about we go that way? Say that one a little bit more, you know, with a little more humour. Don't answer him this time. Just ignore him. And you can do that with dialogue. With an action scene, because there's safety and there's people's lives at risk, even from a fight scene or a sword fight scene or a car scene, you stay back. They've rehearsed it. They've done what they need to. And you need to sort of adhere to that. It's a little more by the numbers, you know.
So, bearing that in mind then, let's move on to the debt collector, because it is going to relate to what I've asked you and what you've just said. And it says,
well, I guess we could do this the old-fashioned way, couldn't we? Yeah? You and I could have a little dance around this mat. See who comes out on top. If you win, all right, I'll move out today. But if I win, then you three can get the fuck out. Don't ever show your face around.
one thing I noticed from watching a great film, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Film. Congratulations on that. But one thing we noticed watching the film, or certainly I noticed, is that the choreography seems to be tied in. The fight choreography seems to be tied in with the story, and certainly the feel of the film. So an example is we see Scott's character French at the beginning doing what Scott Adkins does best. His no-nonsense, hard, showy style of fighting. But that gradually goes as the film progresses. Now, is that tied in with the story of the character's gradual decline without giving too much away?
His emotional, you know, instability that sets in. No, very much so. That was a choreographer called Luc Lafontaine who's coming out to help with this one next week. Luc and I have worked together a long time, and he's very, very savvy with scripts. An absolute film nut and obsessed with, you know, sometimes more so than me. You know, he's a nerd with action movies and with what's supposed to go on. So his choreography always reflects the dramatic story, shall we say, of the actors involved in that choreography, and it matches very, very well. And we'll chat backwards and forwards and argue and shout, and you know, and he'll come up with these fight scenes and explain why something is important, and why we should show that there, and why this particular technique is better than that technique, and he'll pull from dirty boxing, from, you know, Muay Thai, from certain, you know, from elements that character would know about and would be familiar with, and put them in there, and it's, you know, he's very aware of the fans as well. He's very tied into all of that. Does a lot of the conventions, so hears firsthand what people like and what they don't like. So yeah, no, it's good fun working with them. I'm really pleased you noticed that.
Well, we really couldn't notice that, because we do believe, as many fight fans do, that the fight scenes in these films are more than just about the thrills. They are thrilling to watch, don't get me wrong, but they are also there to move the story along, to see it tied into the thread of the characters like that. It makes a nice, refreshing change. So it was Luke that played a big part.
Huge part, yeah. And Scott is always very, very involved in his choreography. He, you know, he's very trusting. He'll listen if you explain why something needs to happen, but he's also very, very aware of what he is able to do and how far he can push it, and whether he wants to push, you know, whether it's within the scope of his character, that particular technique, that move. And what we wanted to do with Debt Collector was go a little more towards real life, as opposed to the 720s and the very acrobatic sort of work that he's done with Boyka, which we all love and is fantastic, has made Scott the star that he is, or is very, very, you know, instrumental in having put him where he is. So but we wanted with this character to have someone who's a little more real, not so real that it was a documentary and boring, but you know, there still has to be a little bit of flourish. You're watching a movie after all. But wanted to be more grounded in reality. So there's less kicks, more elbows and headbutts, and, you know, knees, and just nasty sort of, you know, street fighting, which we all enjoyed, and it was fun to do, you know.
And of course, it's very different from Accident Man, which was quite dark in its own way, but it was also a very humorous film, very sort of a darkly comic film.
Yeah.
If you want to put it that way. But this one's actually is kind of dark in its storyline. It's
a bit, isn't it?
It's quite a departure from what Scott's normally done. So how did the idea for the Debt Collector come about then? When did you decide to do this project?
Wrote the Debt Collector when I first came. We spoke earlier about how when you're a filmmaker or a storyteller, you're trying to look places where people haven't been before. You know, if you obsess with Matrix, your movies are going to end up looking like the Matrix. And so what I've always tried to do is watch older movies and to surround myself with these sort of dangerous characters. I enjoy listening to their anecdotes and their stories anyway. And at the time I knew two fellas who were working as debt collectors. They didn't actually know each other. One was a Belgian, who's a French character, and the other was an actor who'd done some pictures for Roger Corman, who was a dear friend. And they would tell me their anecdotes. I used to train with them, and while we were training or hanging out, they'd tell me stories about when they were debt collecting and how awful it was and things. You know, the story of the debt collector who hung the kid out the window was one that he told me the partner had done that, and that was the point at which he had to give up that particular job. It was too morally depraved. But so I just thought it's an incredible story here that people haven't written. No one's sort of touched on this, and it's sort of a rather fun one. And it was the script itself grew out of time spent with those two fellas, Dominic and Jerry. And it was very, very much based on real life anecdotes and the strange sort of morally grey area that you find in real life as opposed to the black and white. And those films bore me, and it confused some of the fans because they, who's the bad guy? Who do I root for? This strange ending. What's going on? But it's like, but you have to look at it a little differently to that. It's not that sort of a movie, and I think it's very important when you're making films that are small that you don't try and copy Hollywood movies. The idea when you have less than $1 million is not to go out and make a lower budget version of the Avengers or a lower budget version of John Wick. We can't do that. We're never ever going to be able to compete with those movies. They don't have the resources, the stuntmen or the special effects. So what do? You must go where they aren't. So you have to make something a little quirky. You have to make something that tells a story that they aren't telling, because that's the only way you can compete. We made a quirky film that was a character study about two characters that you haven't seen in movies too often, with the exception of Bruce Willis in Last Boy Scout, which you pointed out very rightfully is quite similar, but that wasn't the basis for him. That was coincidental. And you put that film out there and you hope that you're going to do something that's a little fresh and a little different, because that is the only way I think that we can compete. I see so many, I'm very aware of what films are being made, and the lower budget ones seem to be rip-offs of big budget movies, and that's stupid. What good is that doing to anyone, And we have so much freedom now. It's not like the old days when you'd walk into a video store and you would be drawn to a cheaper movie because of the fantastic cover art. And we all did that. I'm probably older than you, but you would. But nowadays we don't have that. Nowadays you have a free-for-all where I can watch big budget movies just as easily. So we need to. Why would I go and see the lower budget version of one of these movies? There's no point. I'll watch the better quality one that I know is going to be good. So the way that I think we can compete is by making pictures that are sort of different stories, that do sort of go a little bit against the grain and throw people. But there you go. That's just my opinion.
Oh my God!
Come on, give me your legs. Give me your fucking legs.
That the reason that stories like The Debt Collector, for example, and other sort of more independent films have trouble finding a more mainstream or a bigger budget backing is because they're more suited to independent market, because you have honestly got genuine filmmakers like yourself making those pictures, or is it just because that Hollywood doesn't want to take the risk of such things?
Well, you're back to front, unfortunately. These films were not shopped out there trying to get studio backing. These were companies that came to me with a certain amount of money and said, we need a film, we like Scott, what can you do for us? And so the process was not the same. If we have scripts that we're taking out there to do as bigger films, and my big aim with the next picture is to do a film with Scott where we pair him with a genuine movie star, a $10 million name, and the two of them play a rapport, and we managed to burst him into the next category actor by just literally pulling him in with another actor, and the script for that one is a very, very a much more familiar sort of storytelling style. It still has the quirkiness that I love, but it's something that is, as you say, more likely to get studio backing. But in the case of Accident Man, Debt Collector, Savage Dog, even Triple Threat, these were projects where the money was there before the idea, and then the idea fitted, fitted itself to that budget, shall we say. So we were very, very lucky in that degree.
Okay, interesting. So, looking at the Debt Collector then, one of the things we noticed that, yes, there's no doubt that Scott is the star of the film, and he's great in it as always. But he does share the screen with Louis Mandylor, who fight fans will probably know him from the Martial Law TV series he was in for 2 or 3 years, but he's got a repertoire of quality pictures behind him. What was Louis Mandylor like to work with?
Just the classiest, most gentle, most creative, most supportive, most down-to-earth actor you could hope for. Brilliant. Makes you feel like a great director. I would go in and look at him, and he'd look at me back, and he said, "That wasn't quite right, was it?" I wouldn't say anything. And he'd say, "Yeah, you wanted me to do it a little bit more like this, with my voice up at the end, because that reflects that character." And I wouldn't say anything. And he'd say, "Yeah, that's a fantastic idea." And he'd do it. He said, "That was a really good note, boss. Fantastic." I still haven't said anything. and you feel bigger and you feel wonderful. But he did, I would say, 98% of the heavy lifting on that movie with regard to taking that character where it was. He was absolutely prepared, knew where everything was. I don't think I had one complaint of any even remotely memorable kind through the whole from him or about him by anyone. Just an incredible joy to work with, and like a hidden gem. I brought him on the next movie I did after that, and he's coming out to England on this one. He is absolutely phenomenal, and he's a force of nature, and he forces by sheer brute force of his abilities, not by anything else, not by being rude or everyone else around him, to bring their professional game up. And there was a moment in the first day working with him where both Scott and I looked at each other and were like, "Oh shit, we're going to have to work hard on this one, because we've got to keep up with this. This guy, he's gone somewhere we had no idea where he'd gone. There's coughing and spluttering, and it's like we both thought he was ill and going to have and it was like, and then it slowly dawned on us what he was doing, and he's enveloped himself. He's found this character, and it's brilliant. I mean, if you know Lewis, he's nothing like the character he played in this movie. Not even remotely like it. It's a complete creation. And doesn't break once. And I listen. The only thing I do is listen for the truth. That's all you do as a director. You sit and you listen. That's most of your job. I design the shots a little bit with John, but he'll make those look beautiful. I don't have to worry too much. I'll say, "I want this one as a long," or whatever. There's a little bit of that goes on, and that's the creativity of directing. But with actors, your job is to listen, and you'll hear untruths, you'll hear things where there's straining, and you go and you help the actor. With Lewis, I sat and listened to the whole thing, and there was nothing. I mean, for me it was an insanely pleasurable, and sort of rewarding experience. It was absolutely fantastic, and I don't think I'm getting ahead of myself to say that Scott enjoyed it as well, and I think it really benefited both of us. He's brilliant.
So there's always a risk, isn't there, that when you have two characters with two actors sharing the scenes and the spotlight, if you like, that either the chemistry won't be there or one will dominate over the other. However, what I noticed is that they had tremendous chemistry on screen, and think of any buddy-buddy pairing through action films through the ages, and they're right up there with them.
Thank
Was
you
that
so
something
much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Was that something you were concerned about at first, that maybe the two wouldn't gel?
I'm concerned about everything when you start these things. You're so terrified, Night before, you never sleep. I don't think I've ever slept the night before filming, but that's my issue. That's a problem with me, and the concern on every level. You always have this recurring nightmare. I'm going to be standing on set on my own trying to move a camera around as everyone else has just vanished. But no, they were fantastic. Scott was incredible, and if you think about it, this is a film that's being sold on Scott's name. It's been financed on Scott's name. Scott has everything riding on this film. If it goes bad, it's his name that gets dragged. It's a huge risk, and he gave 100% to Lewis, and let Lewis have these scenes. Let him have these wonderful dramatic moments, the tears in the eye and the long take, and gave him fight scenes, and for me, Scott displayed an incredible amount of maturity, of artistic maturity, and realised that the more he shared with with Lewis, and made Lewis look good, the better it would make him look, and that's a rare thing. And I've worked with a lot of leading actors in this genre, and I got to tell you, not many of them would. There's a lot of selfishness, there's a lot of ego, there's a lot of comparing how many lines or close-ups one gets, and how much time spent on lighting his close-up compared to mine. It's a very, very competitive business, and I don't say that in a way that I'm making fun of these guys. It's their lifeline, their living after all. But Scott was very giving, and it took that giving to make that relationship work, and it's brilliant. It was fantastic watching them both. I was very, very lucky. A very lucky director. I think, I really hope they enjoy it. I hope it resonates with the with the UK. Really, I'm English. Scott's English, and it's like, and there's Selena in there who's English, and I just, it would really please me to think they enjoyed this picture. A lot of the humour is quite English, I think, as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
the sort of self-deprecating, slightly sarcastic. And it was funny watching it with an American audience because I wasn't sure if a lot of it was going to play, but they enjoyed it,
Wipe your face, you look like a vampire. Check the system. You know there's meant to be 2 L's in thrilling, right? Was that you? Yeah? Oh, shit, you're in a movie? Oh, shit.
A few old B movies back in the day, you know?
Yeah? That's pretty cool, man. Looks like a piece of shit, though.
Yeah, it was, but at least I'm on the poster, yeah?
Looks just like you, mate. What did they do? Did they cut your eyes out and stick them on there, did they?
I'm hungry, let's get something to eat.
You're a ninja then, yeah?
Right.
Immediately, what we're really looking forward to, because we've reported on it so many times, and we are watching for bated breath for a release date, is Triple Threat,
Right.
which is the Expendables of
Right.
martial arts movies.
Triple Threat was delivered a long time ago. It's a very, very good movie. We had a hell of a time editing it. Went backwards and forwards between here and China. There's the usual sort of, shuttling of information, misunderstanding. It ended up being very, very good. It's an awesome, awesome experience. I watched it on the big screen. I had a couple of martial arts fans who didn't know what was going on, didn't know what they were going to come see, and I said, I just want you to come and sit through this screening and make sure I'm not losing my mind. And they really, really enjoyed it. It's and these are, I keep people around me that are bullshit detectives. They tell me, you're in trouble, get out of there, get your name off it. But they absolutely loved it. It really, really worked very well. It's gone to China. Main investment came from China. When China makes its mind up about the release, which is October, is what we've been told. The moment they get that, it gets released in the rest of the world. We have a festival that wants to release it in Europe. That'll be the premiere for Europe. It's going to be very, very exciting, but it's all going to happen really quickly when it happens. I'm very proud of my work on that one. It was a hell of a job, in the jungle up to my knees in mud, and then in Bangkok in the heat, and it was a very rewarding experience. It really, really works well as a film. We're working on Avengement right now, which is Scott Adkins, Craig Fairbrass, Nick Moran. We've got Rosso Hennessy back from Excellent Man, who's from Game of Thrones and is a force of nature of his own. And we've got a few other people well known in the UK now, but it's a really, really fun cast. And this is something, it's a little more stage bound than we've done before. But as I said, with these low budget ones, we need to show what Scott can do and why, and make people really question as to why he's not doing huge movies. There's a hell of a lot of action in it though, and it will not let people down on that front. But it's pushing, and Scott's pushing himself in a direction he's not been before, and it's a hell of a character arc. I mean, it's a study and a half, and I think people are going to really dig this one.
It sounds great. Obviously, people are going to be watching this interview, going to be reading about upcoming projects. Is there any message you'd like to give to our readers and our followers about life, about if they want to pursue filmmaking? Any advice you'd like to give back to them?
Make movies, and just make them. But before you make the movie, have the script and have people read it. Ask friends to read it. Keep that group of people around you that tell you, truthfully what something's like, and just have them read the script until you get it right. And when it's right, go out and move. Make it. Don't be afraid. I think that would be it.
Well, Jesse, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to Kung Fu Kingdom. It's been an absolute honour. Now, before we go, before we go, I'd like to present you with something in recognition
Wonderful.
of your work in action cinema and martial
Brilliant.
arts in particular. We'd like to include you in our Hall of Fame
Fantastic.
and
I'm honoured.
present you with
Ah, fantastic.
our
A
wonderful
t-shirt.
t-shirt.
Brilliant. Yin yang. Very, very good. I'll wear that in a picture. We'll get that done.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much.